Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. If you're here, if you're just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I am a mom. I am a nana. I am a wellness advocate, enrolling in grad school, working on my applications as we speak, so that I can pursue my licensed mental health counselor master's and so many other things. I own an online boutique. I just love wellness. And the big thing about wellness for me is that if you are just stumbling on my page, I have fought with anxiety and depression for most of my adult and childhood life. And while I'm not recovered, because you can never totally recover from that, I have learned a lot of things that have helped me to be more well and more in control of some of that. And so if you're just stumbling on my page, good morning, Denise. I started Wellness Wednesday as an opportunity to share information, not just from me, but for you to share information as well, as far as what helps you to feel more well and to kind of control some of those things a little bit more, because what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. And also sometimes there are things that we hear over and over and over again in our lives, and it takes the right moment for it to really click and take hold. Kind of like, good morning, Danielle, kind of like when we talk till we're blue in our faces to our children, trying to teach them what we've already learned and they still have to learn for themselves. Same kind of thing. We have to hear it over and over and over again sometimes until we're in the right place where it makes sense. So if you've been on my Wellness Wednesday before and you hear a lot of the same things over and over again, that is why, because a lot of the things we talk about end up being mindset more than body, diet, etc. Although sometimes we do talk about those things. But a lot of them all tie back to the same things and the same concepts. So if you hear some things when you're on my Wellness Wednesday that sound repetitive and you're like, oh, she said this before, think about it, because it may be something that you need to be hearing over and over again. I know that was the case for me. So today we're going to talk about negative self-talk. It's something that I'm personally familiar with. I forgot to say, if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this until afterwards, hit hashtag replay in the comments so that I know you saw it. And as always, if you have information to share, Facebook doesn't always show me all of the things. So if you make a comment or you ask a question and I don't respond, it's just because I didn't see it. I promise it's not because I'm ignoring you. And I will respond afterwards if I didn't see it while I was live. So back to negative self-talk. Today we're going to talk about negative self-talk. It's something I'm personally intimately familiar with. And I never realized how bad it could sound to others until I actually had changed my thinking a little bit and then heard someone else tear into themselves. Now, some of you that watch regularly have heard this story before, about how my ex-husband, ex-boyfriends, pretty much anybody I've ever been in a relationship with, had gotten so upset with me because they heard me or witnessed me tear into myself in the mirror. And then as time went on, I started doing some internal work. I've basically been doing it my whole life, and learned to stop doing that to some degree, although I still have my moments here and there. And then when I was fitting someone for an activewear outfit from my boutique, I got to witness what that looked like from the outside. Because this individual was literally tearing into themselves in the mirror, and the words they spoke, it just broke my heart. And at that time, sometimes we don't realize the things that we do that affect others until we're in that second or third party situation. And it was then that I realized the impact of how that could affect, because even though I wasn't, good morning, Miss Sarah, even though I wasn't close to this woman, I had already established kind of a relationship with her. And when I witnessed this, it literally broke my heart. It made me angry. It hurt. I wanted to help her and I didn't know how. I was just so stunned. So it gave me a little bit of a window in what it feels like when someone you love is witnessing you do this to yourself. So What does negative self-talk and your inner critic have to do with each other? Well, that's kind of almost an obvious. The question I asked when I posted the teaser about today was, are you your own worst critic? And more than likely you are. Most of us are. We are much harder on ourselves and much more critical of ourselves than anybody around us could ever be. So what is that inner critic? What is that? Okay, well, listen carefully, because if you've been on my Wellness Wednesday before, this is going to sound familiar. It is that voice in your mind that often speaks to you when you want to take risks and step out of your comfort zone. It is a voice of fear. So here we are. Good morning, honey. How are you today? Good morning, Miss Carla. So here we are back to fear. And that's what this boils down to. The purpose of fear, that fight or flight response, that inner critic, they're all kind of synonymous, okay? And their purpose is to keep you in a safe zone and protect you from any possible emotional injuries. Now, originally, back in the day, when we were hunting for our food and running from dinosaurs or large animals or whatever the case may have been, it was to keep us physically safe. Now, because our culture has changed and our needs have changed and our lives have changed, its purpose is to keep you in the safe zone and protect you from any emotional injuries like judgment, reaction, blame, or shame. It is an internal resistance to change the unknown, and the main reason for you to keep playing small and not dare to go after your dreams or desires. Your inner critic does an excellent job of keeping you safe. However, it may have an adverse impact on your life. And here's how. Let's see if any of this sounds familiar. And you can feel free to sound off if you feel this. It makes you doubt yourself and your abilities, even if you know you're capable of achieving great things. Now, we talked a few weeks about imposter syndrome. So here's where that comes into play. Again, if you're watching regularly, then you're seeing how all of this kind of ties together and ties back to a lot of the same root causes. If you haven't been watching, I encourage you to please go back and watch previous videos. You might find them helpful. You are able to admire others for their achievements without acknowledging your own. That's something I'm definitely guilty of. You might take your own accomplishments for granted, thinking that anyone could have done it, or attributing them to luck or some kind of force outside of your control instead of your own doing. That smacks of that imposter syndrome we talked about a few weeks ago. Your inner critic can make you feel stressed and anxious, especially when you're trying to achieve something that's important to you. It can also make you worry excessively about what other people think of you. You might fear that they will think less of you if you fail. Failure, that's something we're gonna talk specifically about in just a minute here. It can cause you to take things personally or allow others to put you down and make things about you personally. It can cause you to stay in an unhealthy relationship with someone. I've talked about this before too. Or stop you from starting a new relationship because of the risk of getting hurt, or because you're afraid that no one else will love you, that if you leave this person, if you're in a very toxic relationship and you leave that person, you may have reached a point in that relationship where you believe that nobody else will accept you or love you, and that's why you have to stay where you are, which can be very, not only toxic, but can also be very dangerous at times. Good morning, Miss Ann. It can also cause you to stay stuck in a job that you don't like or even hate because you're afraid that you will not be successful or be able to make money if you make that change. I like to refer to this as big fish in little pond syndrome sometimes, because your safe zone, you're good at what you do, you're good where you are, you think that people where you are like you, and you don't think you're capable of making that change, or you fear that you won't be as respected or as accepted in a new position or in a new situation. So what do you do with this? How do you stop all this? Because a lot of times, I think a lot of us are experiencing all of this at once, or some combination of all of these at one time. So that's usually the crux of my anxiety, is all of that fear. So your inner critic boils down to fear, which again is, okay, so Sarah, you're feeling what I'm talking about right now. Good. It is 100% about fear, but how it can manifest is it doesn't always look like fear. It looks like, I can't do this. I'm not capable. I'm not qualified. Instead of what it actually is, which is the fear of that change. And sometimes we even fear success, because success changes things. It may change the way the people around us look at us. I've heard comments before. People have told me about comments before. Oh, you think you're too good for us now. Oh, it must be nice to be able to spend that kind of money on things. And those are the kinds of things that will actually make us fear success. If we fear that in some way, shape, or form, that positive change for us is going to have a negative impact on the people around us, even though we're not responsible for those people or how we feel, right? So what do we do with all of this? This is a lot. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. But if you've got some or all of these things rolling around in your head, usually it's not just one. It can be extremely overwhelming. Having recently retired from my job of 21 years, and stepped out of my comfort zone into the big pond, if you will, to work my business more specifically, and grow my activewear business and research and dig into grad school and all these things that create major changes for me. I've experienced a lot of these very same things myself. And just on a specific note regarding that recovery from anxiety and depression, you can absolutely feel like you've got it under control and that you have recovered until you face a new situation that brings all these things up. Okay. I've done some very outside of my comfort zone things lately, and I have more coming. I have a podcast interview next week that makes me really nervous. And I won't go into all of that right now, but it brings a lot of that back up. A lot of those old things that you think you've dealt with. So what do we do with it? All right. So let me get on with it. What do we do with it? Well, first of all, we have to know, and we have to find a way to recognize, and it takes a while, that voice that's going on in our heads is not necessarily a reflection of reality. In fact, 99.9% of the time, it's not a reflection of reality at all. Okay? I used to be very, very uncomfortable having pictures taken of myself. I would even turn beet red in the face, so I would have a beautiful picture and I would be really, really red right here and the rest of me would look normal, because I was so excruciatingly uncomfortable being singled out like that. I also was that person that would tear into myself in front of the mirror. It took a lot of work and a very long time to realize that what I was seeing in the mirror, a lot of times I would leave the house and whatever little teeny tiny thing I was so concerned with before I left, nobody would mention. I would think my hair looked like crap. I would get more compliments on my hair when I walked out the door than I ever had in my life. Good morning, Erica. Just for a small example of the kind of thing I'm talking about. So what you see in the mirror, especially if you've got an extremely loud inner critical voice, what you see in the mirror is not, usually never, what everybody else is looking at, okay? The things that we are laser focused on picking apart are most often not the things that nobody is looking at, okay? So we have to understand that our inner critic is not a reflection of reality. It is there to protect us and to keep us in our safe zone, which is rarely, if ever, a good thing in this day and age. If we were running from dinosaurs, yes, but we're not anymore. The dinosaurs we're running from are usually in our heads. So you have to challenge your thinking. You have to say, is this what's really happening, or is this just my perspective? How can you do that? I've talked about this before when we talked about imposter syndrome. Look at your past achievements. Play detective. What have you done? What is it about you that's good that you've accomplished, that you know is true, about yourself. Put the proof of those things in front of you. Solicit feedback. Now, I'm going to exercise a caution here. You can solicit feedback from people you trust who will give you good constructive criticism or give you positive feedback. However, I'm going to throw a disclaimer in there, and this may be a quote that you've heard. Don't ever take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from, okay? If you're going to seek feedback from people that you trust and respect. But when you seek that, you have to be open for that constructive criticism. And you have to understand that if you're asking for it, you may get some things that you don't like. And if it's someone that you know, like, and trust, they are probably telling you the truth, not to be mean, but telling you the truth in love, to help you with what they see. I know some people, including myself on occasion, who have struggled with taking constructive criticism for whatever reason, that they don't want to be compared to the person that's giving it to them, or that they may have asked for that feedback, but deep down inside, they were hoping to hear something good. The best example I can come up with is if any of you have a child, or know someone, have a close friend, if you don't have a child of your own, have a niece or nephew or a close friend that has a child that may have talked about this. Especially if there are with two parents, whether they're living in the same house or separated, divorced, whatever the case may be, you have two parents. And you will often have a child who will go repeatedly to the person that is feeding what they want. How do I say that better? Especially at 19, 20 years old, 18, even, 16, 17, a child will have it in their head that this is the way something should be, okay? And teenagers, young adults, they think they know everything, right? So if you have one parent who is the truth teller, for lack of a better way to put it, and the other parent who is the, oh no, I support you, whatever you do, I agree with you. You see where I'm going with this? And this may be the case with friends too. You as an adult, if you don't have children, or your children are grown and out of the house and you don't remember this, you may have two friends, one who is always on board with whatever you're thinking and always agrees with you. And the other one that's like, Donna, I just don't know about that. What about this? And what about this? And are you sure that that's you know what I mean? You have the person that's the realistic person that's willing to speak up and tell you when they think you're screwing up or about to. And then the other, not necessarily in a negative way, but that person that's like, hey, just hold on a second. Let's think about this. And then the other person that's like, yeah, whatever you said, I agree. Let's go. Let's do it. Whatever the case may be. When you want someone to agree with you and support your thought process, you're going to go to who? But when you're not sure and you really want true feedback and you're really weighing life decisions, which one are you going to? You're going to go to the person that's always honest with you, even if it might make you mad. So same idea. Solicit feedback from people you know, like, and trust. People you know are going to tell you the truth, even if it's going to hurt your feelings. Does that mean negative Nancy over here? If your name is Nancy and you're watching, I'm sorry. It just rolled off my tongue. Does that mean negative Nancy over here who never has a good thing to say about anyone or anything, including herself? That's probably that person that you don't want to take criticism from, because you're not going to take advice from Nancy because she doesn't ever have a good thing to say, right? But more than likely, you're exactly, Denise. Most people are afraid to speak their mind and tell the truth. But furthermore, a lot of people, even if they ask for it, are afraid to hear it. So if you are going to seek feedback, seek it from someone you know, like, and trust, that you know is going to be honest with you with love. And then even if you feel a little taken aback by what they have to say, let it stew. Don't react. Listen, okay? If you're going to solicit that feedback, you have to be open to what they have to say and not react and get angry when you hear it. Okay, so what else can we do if you're not ready to solicit feedback and hear what other people really have to say just yet? You can separate those thoughts, those I suck thoughts, for lack of a better way to put it. You can separate those thoughts by writing them down in second person. So what does that mean? If I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, you're ugly, or if I'm like, I'm so ugly, I'm so stupid, I'm so fat. Does this sound familiar? Anybody else done this? If you haven't, fantastic. I'm really proud of you. But what if you put yourself in the same situation I found myself in when I witnessed someone else doing this, but you don't have anybody else around? So you're going to put yourself in that situation by writing those statements down. And instead of writing down, I suck, I'm fat, I'm ugly, you're going to write down, you suck, you're fat, you're ugly. Those are really harsh words, right? And I have to wonder, as you're listening right now, how many times you've said those things to yourself in the mirror. But as you're listening to me say them right now, you're flinching a little and you're like, ooh, don't say that. That's terrible. Don't say that about yourself, Donna. I would be willing to bet that's exactly what's going through some of your minds, right? Even now, as I say it, it kind of makes me cringe a little bit. So you can write those down as you statements instead of I statements. And what that does is it puts it in front of you as sort of an alien point of view, for lack of a better way to put it, as sort of a point of view where it's almost like hearing somebody else say it. And it kind of tends to change how you look at it, if that makes sense. So change when you have that negative inner critic going on, write those thoughts down. But instead of I can't, I am, whatever, write those down with a you in front of them instead. And see how that changes your perspective about what you're saying to yourself. I hope that makes sense to you. So, the other way to do this is to imagine, let's just say that the last two people on my screen here are Erica and Denise. So let's say that Erica and Denise, isn't that great, Carla? That was a new one for me. I had not heard that before. So let's say Erica and Denise are really good friends, okay? And which they actually do happen to be friends. But let's say Erica and Denise are really, really good friends. And Denise is firing at herself in the mirror. I suck. I'm fat. I'm ugly. I can't do this. I'm not capable. There's all those evil, ugly things, okay? That's her inner critic talking. So what if Denise pictured Erica, who's her very bestest friend? I don't know that they're best friends. I just know they are friends. What if Denise pictured Erica as her, and Erica was her very best friend. She loves her like a sister. She would do anything for her. I see you, Denise. And what if somebody said those things to Erica in front of Denise? The very same things that Denise is saying in the mirror. What if Denise, let's say, what if I walked up to Erica and just hammered all those exact same sentences out to Erica in front of Denise? How do you think Denise would react to that? Do you think that Denise would have the same reaction that she's giving herself in the mirror when she's saying those very same things to herself? Probably not. So that's another way that you can kind of put that inner critic in check, is by, would you say, or would you tolerate someone else saying what you're saying to yourself to someone that you love? Because if you wouldn't, why are you treating the person in the mirror differently than what you would expect someone to treat someone you love, or how you would treat someone you love? So that's another approach that you can take. Okay, so you can also write I statements, those I statements, with more compassion. Instead of I'm such an idiot, you can say, I may struggle at times, but I'm competent and smart in many, many ways. So how can you reframe that? That's that thinking reframing that we've talked about before. Instead of taking aim at yourself and firing, how can you reframe that? Because just because you aren't good at one particular thing, or you have failed at one particular thing, does not mean you're stupid. It means you're failing and you're caught up in that moment of that failure. And you can choose to use that and project that on everything else you try to do, or to stop that right there. So you can reframe those statements, again, in writing. Sometimes that really helps to see it in writing. You would be amazed what a difference it makes. And instead of I'm such an idiot, try I may struggle at times, but I am smart and competent in any ways. And then you're probably going to find yourself circling back around, especially if you're journaling it. You're going to find yourself circling back around to that detective thing we talked about, where you're going to list out things that you know that you've done and you've done well, things that you've accomplished that are going to help feed that I'm smart and competent in many ways. So, your inner critic gets, yes, I'm looking at my notes, guys. If you see me looking down, I have to have notes because this is a lot of information. And I have to stay on track or I'll rabbit trail. We'll be here for days. You know what I'm saying? So the other important thing is to try not to act on your inner critic. And that's really hard. It gets louder the closer you get to stepping out of your comfort zone. The more you're about to start a new job, you're about to change jobs, you're about to retire from your job, you're about to start a new online business like I have in the past. Anything like that, anything that's outside of your comfort zone, you're about to speak in front of a group of people. That's a great example for the first time. Or even for the 10th time, but this is a bigger group of people or it's a different group of people. And you may have done this 9 times before, but this is a whole new occasion. You're scared to death and you just know you're going to screw up. Don't act on that inner critic. Okay. We talked about this again with imposter syndrome. We've covered it with the discussions about fear, about muscling through. For me, what always helped was the fear of embarrassment or the fear of not following through with my commitment was the only thing that was greater than my fear of whatever I was about to do. Okay. Was the fear of looking stupid or the fear of not fulfilling a commitment that I had made to someone. So those were always the things that kind of settled me down and kept me in check and made it possible, as difficult as it was, to muscle through whatever it was I was afraid of. So don't act on your inner critic. There were times where the inner critic got so loud that I would find myself, and I've talked about this before too, pacing in someone's foyer, entryway in somebody's house, trying to figure out how to get out of a cul-de-sac without anybody seeing me because I was freaking out about a gathering I was supposed to be at. Absolutely freaking out, social anxiety and full-blown madness. 5 layers of clothing because it was cold and it was a bonfire, circling in the entryway of my daughter's friend's house, trying to figure out how I could sneak out of the cul-de-sac without anybody knowing I was leaving. So don't act on that fear. Ultimately, that inner critic is what is keeping you from stepping outside of your comfort zone. So you can say to that inner voice, you know what? Thank you. I know you're trying to keep me safe. I need to try this. And imagine what's the worst that could happen. Are any puppies going to die because of what you're about to do? That was an example that was used on one of the websites I used for research, and it kind of cracked me up. Are any puppies going to die? Is the world going to explode? What really is the worst that can happen if you step forward into whatever it is you are about to do, try, or otherwise? So try not to act on that inner critic. If anything, kind of sit and stew for a little bit and remind yourself of the reasons that you were about to take whatever that step is, and what is the worst that could happen if you do. And remember, a lot of times the worst that can happen that comes to mind is fail. Y'all, those of us that are parents, aunts, uncles that have dealt with children at any point in our life know that we try to tell these children over and over again what we've experienced because we're what? We're trying to save them from the pain of going through what we did. We want them to learn from our own experiences. That happens sometimes when you're mentoring people in a job setting, in any kind of mentorship setting. You try to tell them what you've learned personally so that they can learn from you and not experience that themselves. But how do we all learn best? We all learn best by failing. We learn best by failing miserably for ourselves. That's how that lesson sticks. So for those of us as parents, grandparents, whatever, or who have mentored people and have said, don't do this because this is what will happen and this is how I know, and that person, child, whatever, marches right out there and does it anyway, it's not because you failed. It's because they have to learn by failing. That's how the lesson sticks. I should probably be careful what I say. Whatever modern psychology says now, I truly believe that we learn our best lessons by our own experience. My daughter has been the quickest to message me and say, Mom, I'm so sorry for good morning, Miss Rita, when she's experienced whatever it was herself, and the first thing that happened was she thought back to a situation she and I had, and she understood for the first time because she was in that situation or in something similar with her child that was making her go, oh, I get it now. Sometimes we can talk until we're blue in the face. And that's why I say when you're watching these Wellness Wednesdays and you hear me say some of the same things over and over again, those are the same things I heard over and over again. I was like 42 before some of them started to click, okay? So sometimes we just have to hear those things or see those things or experience those things until our brains are ready to go, oh, I get it now, okay? So that's just, don't let that inner critic stop you from stepping out of that comfort zone. And a lot of times, like I said, the biggest thing is that fear of failure. And that is how we learn best. So don't be afraid to fail. Failure is okay. That's how we learn. We can step back if we fail. Usually a failure is never a true failure if you've learned something from it and you were able to kind of step back, adjust, and start moving forward or start moving in a different direction that works better, right? Okay, so the last 2 ways, and then I'm going to wrap this up because we're running a little long and I have to go get my grandson today. Cultivate a growth mindset. One of the best ways to silence your inner critic is to surround yourself with people that are focused on growth, on self-improvement, on growth. I know those may be the people that annoy you the most right now. Oh, Susie's at it again. She's talking about how she's been meditating. Actually, that's Donna. How she's been meditating for 90 days and it's changing her life. Well, why not try it? Look at those people that if you're rolling your eyes at them, but at the same time you're feeling someone inspired, or you find yourself saying, I wish I could do that, maybe it's something that is worth trying, right? Actually, I think this might be my grandson coming. So spend time with people who focus on growth. Embrace challenges as opportunities instead of threats. Celebrate effort. Even if you failed, if you really gave it all you've got, then that's worth celebrating, because a lot of times it's not the results that really are where it's at. It's the journey and how you got there. I have a business coach that says a couple business coaches actually, that say focus on the activity, not the results. Because if you focus on the results, what happens when you don't get the results you want? You stop doing the things. But doing the things is where you find the most growth and the most change, right? And then, again, learn from failures, because that's how we learn. I can't stress that enough. That's how we learn. Another thing you can do, the last thing that I'll give you today, is to practice positive affirmations. This might be one of the easiest things you can do. You can write them down. You can say them in the mirror. You can use a dry erase marker. Write them on the mirror so that you can see them every day. Stick a note up, whatever. I have been known to write positive affirmations on the mirror with a dry erase marker. And I've even been known to come home and find where Eric has written a positive affirmation on the mirror for me, where I can see it. So here's some simple ones that you can get started. There was a story about a young lady. I stumbled across a TikTok video some time ago where she discussed, she never believed she was beautiful. So as kind of a joke with her friends, she started doing these videos daily where she acted like she was beautiful and she talked like she was beautiful and she pretended she was beautiful. And guess what happened over a period of several weeks, months, somewhere between there and a year? She actually started to believe she was beautiful. The horror! Oh my gosh, can that happen? Yes, because what you're telling yourself and what you're putting out there, can eventually actually retrain your brain. So here's some easy positive affirmations that you can say out loud, write down, put on the mirror, whatever. I am happy. I am lovable. I am open to financial abundance. I believe in myself and my abilities. I deserve the best things that life have to offer. I am grateful. Life loves me. And depending on what your beliefs are, one of my favorites is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I am strong because of God. So, whatever your beliefs are, you can find affirmations that fit into your beliefs. And the more you put them on repeat, the more you write them down, the more you put them where you can see them, the more apt you are to believe them, because we are what we repeatedly do. Okay, I hope you all found this helpful. I thought this was a fantastic topic. You may find that going forward, we start digging in a little deeper on some of these. If you found this helpful, please feel free to share. If you stew on it for a little bit, you have any questions, you want to shoot me a message, you want to see the links that I worked with today for this information, absolutely shoot me a message. I will send this to you. I will drop those affirmations in the comments a little bit later. And I just hope you found this helpful. And again, if you did, please feel free to share. If you have any topics you might like me to consider for a future Wellness Wednesday, shoot me a message. Let me know. Just remember, no politics, no negativity, and have a fabulous Wednesday. Be well. Thank you so much for being here. Mwah.